you want to address? When I ask researchers this question, I often get this answer, the broader public. But that's an answer I can't accept because the broader public does not exist, at least not in science communication. Each communication situation has its own specific target audience, which means the members of the target audience share certain characteristics that define this very specific target audience. Sometimes an audience can be very large, with many members who doesn't seem to have much in common. Think about the target audience of an open house event at your institute. You might say that's for everybody, not just for academics or university students. We want families to come as well as seniors, teenagers, immigrants, everybody. It's absolutely okay to have all these different groups in mind as your target audience. But all these people deserve your special attention and shouldn't be labeled as the broader public. If you really think about them, you will notice that although they seem very different at first sight, they still share a few things. For example, they live in the same city where your institute is, or at least in a place very close to your city. And all these people share this interest in finding out what's going on at your institute. Instead of watching a movie or so, they come to your institute. So when you want to answer the second W question, who do I want to address, you should describe your target audience in more detail. Here are a few details that are almost always important when thinking about one's target audience. What does your target audience know about your topic? What level of education do they have? How old are they? What type of media do they normally use? Depending on your topic, other aspects might be important. If you are communicating about your research on autonomous driving, for example, you should think about the traffic behavior of your target audience. When you do literary studies and are communicating your research project about comics, you might think about what your target audience reads. Often, values, political opinions, certain needs, fears, hopes, and hobbies are important. It really depends on your topic and where you are communicating. If you are invited to give an interview for a radio show or a podcast, the editor or host probably knows their target audience and you can ask them about it. But when you want to create your own blog, YouTube channel or such like, you have more control about which target audience you are aiming at. Luckily, there is a method that makes it much easier for you to think about your target audience. It's called the persona method. The persona method entails creating fictitious people that could be a member of your target audience. It is important that these personas do not embody ideals, but that they present at least minor challenges for your communication. Let me give you a realistic example. At the Ruhr University of Bochum, where I often teach science communication classes, is an institute where they do a lot of research with birds. Let's call it the Raven Research Institute. Let's say there is this PhD student Rosalie, who is involved with organizing an open house event. For this event, Rosalie could create the persona of Renata, who is an amateur birdwatcher and photographer. Renata would be a very idealized persona in this example because she has a lot of interest in birds and would have a great deal of prior knowledge about ravens. A persona who could present more of a challenge is her boyfriend Ralf, a gamer who is only reluctantly accompanying Renata to the open house at the Raven Research Institute and would rather be sitting in front of his computer than learning about ravens of all things. Maybe he is even quite annoyed by Renata's passion for birds. Our raven researcher Rosalie has to come up with something in order to get Ralf interested in her ravens. The following is an example of what Ralf's persona profile could look like. Ralf is 34 years old and a system administrator for an insurance company. He has been in a relationship with bird lady Renata for 4 years. Ralf loves playing computer games, especially those with medieval themes, and is interested in technology of all kinds. He reads the magazine MIT Technology Review and some tech blogs and finds it relaxing to listen to audiobooks. His favorite TV show is Game of Thrones. Ralf is slightly overweight but otherwise relatively healthy. He is a foodie and enjoys cooking without thinking too much about whether it's healthy or not. He hates exercising, but enjoys going to the countryside with Renata, but is annoyed if she spends too much time searching for birds. Ralf is a rather reserved person and even shy. He doesn't like much stress and avoids situations with too many people. He lives in a 3-bedroom apartment with Renata and grows herbs on their balcony for his cooking adventures. He usually rides public transit. Ralf doesn't want to lose Renata and would do pretty much anything to please her. So he joins her for the open house event at the Raven Research Institute. He has picked up a few things about birds in general from his girlfriend, but otherwise doesn't care that much about them. Ralf's persona could be complemented with any number of details. But Rosalie already knows what kind of content would win Ralf over. He would certainly be interested in why ravens in particular play such an important role in his favorite TV show Game of Thrones, and which raven myth and sagas served as models for their role. That could surely be linked to the real characteristics of these clever birds as they are studied at the Institute. Ralf might also be interested in the technology that raven researchers use to observe ravens in the wild. And Ralf would probably be happy to get something tasty to eat at the food stand at the open house. You can see how easy it is to come up with ideas for such an event when you have a persona. If you ever have to communicate with a really large audience, it may be helpful to create multiple personas. Once you have created your personas, you can start thinking about how you want to approach them. An initial step is figuring out what your attitude towards your target audience exactly is. Experts often have the unconscious feeling that non-experts have gaps in their knowledge that have to be filled through the expert's communication. You should free yourself from this deficit model as soon as possible. Think about the many situations in which you yourself are a non-expert at the doctor's office, or when the IT support fixes a problem with your computer, for example. How would you feel if the expert in that situation talked to you in a condescending manner? Approach your target audience in a way that you would like to be approached by an expert in a situation in which you are the non-expert. Level the playing field, give them the opportunity to ask questions, and remember that you can learn something from the worries and excitement of the non-experts. Unfortunately, there is no one way to develop this kind of communication approach. People often encounter more unconscious mechanisms and blockades along the way. Curse of knowledge is the term psychologists use to describe a common situation in which experts of any discipline are not really able to put themselves in the shoes of beginners. The time in which they themselves were beginners is too far in the past. Therefore, they are expecting too much from their lay audience and moving too fast for them. Things that are trivial and simple for you can be exciting, highly complex, and difficult to understand for your target audience. You should therefore divide your expert knowledge into smaller portions that your target audience can digest. Specific strategies of how to approach your target audience often depend on your content and the media you are using. There are, however, a few basic tips that you can use in almost any case. Present yourself as a person and as an expert in your field. Figure out what you have in common with your target audience and build on that. Questions are an extremely powerful tool in communications. Ask questions, be interested in what your audience thinks about your topic, and invite your audience to ask you questions. Figure out what your target audience's relationship is to your topic and elaborate on that aspect. Meet your audience where they are. If there are common prejudices, opinions, or outdated general knowledge about your topic, you should address that from the start. Think about ways you could surprise or provoke your target audience. That will for sure get their attention. If you follow these tips, it should be easy for you to connect with your audience. And that's one of the most important aspects of science communication. You might be surprised how inspiring the unfamiliar perspectives of your lay audience can be.